Today we're going to learn about quadratic and polynomial, and this is under the college algebra review. So our first problem is y minus 8 over 3 times y plus 2 thirds. So hold on. Sorry, I had to find my pencil. So what I'm going to do is since this is a fraction and I don't like fractions because it makes everything more complicated, I want to get rid of this 3. So how do I get rid of it? I'm going to multiply everything by 3. So y minus 8 over 3, y plus 2 over 3. So when you multiply this 3, it'll get rid of this fraction, so this is good. So 3 times y is 3y minus 3 times 8 over 3 is the 3 cancels, so you're just left with negative 8. And then 3 times y is 3y. And then plus 2 over 3 is 3, so it's just 2. And then we set this to 0 because we want to solve for y. So what you can do is break these problems into 2. So we can say 3y minus 8 equals 0, comma. So you're going to get two answers. 3y plus 2 equals 0. So let's solve for y for this part. So I'm going to add 8 on both sides. So you get 3y equals 0 plus 8 is 8 divided by 3. So you get y equals 8 over 3. And then for here, we want to solve for y, so I'm going to subtract 2. So 3y equals negative 2. Divided by 3 by both sides, so we get y equals negative 2 thirds. Okay, so we get two answers. So we got to make sure, do any of these work? I mean, you get two answers, but we got to make sure it's true. So let's plug it into the original equation. So let's first start with 8 thirds. So we said that y is 8 thirds, so it's 8 thirds minus 8 thirds. And then 8 thirds plus 2 thirds. So 8 thirds minus 8 thirds is 0. And then anything times 0 is just 0, right? So that's 5 thirds. So that it's just 0. So that's true. So definitely 8 thirds is one of our answers. Definitely true. Now let's try negative 2 thirds. So let's do negative 2 over 3 minus 8 over 3. And then negative 2 thirds. Negative 2 thirds plus 2 thirds. So that's negative 2 thirds plus 2 thirds is 0. So we remember what we said, anything times 0 is just 0. So that's 0. So this is true. So both of these answers are correct. Okay, next problem. So we're 2x cubed minus 4x squared minus 30x equals 0. Okay, so I'm looking at this and can we factor out anything? We can. We can factor out a 2 and an x. So what do I have to multiply to get x cubed? X squared, because x squared times 2x is 2x cubed. And then minus 2x, because negative 2x times 2x is negative 4x squared. And then minus 15, because negative 15 times positive 2x is negative 30x. And you set that to 0. So can this be factored even more? Yes. And don't forget the 2x as well. So we said, okay, so when we're factoring this, we want two numbers when multiplied gives you negative 15, and when added gives you negative 2, right? So negative 15. Let's try negative 5 and positive 3. So negative 5 times positive 3 is negative 15. When you add those two numbers, negative 5 plus 3 is negative 2. So that works. And then don't forget the 2x. So we're going to get a total of 3 answers, right? Because we could break these into 3 parts. Remember, so 2x equals 0, and then comma x minus 5 equals 0, and then x plus 3 equals 0. So we can solve for x. So let's start with the x minus 5. I add 5 to both sides, so x equals 5. And then for this one, I subtract 3. So that should be x equals negative 3. And then for this one, 2x equals 0, I just divided by 2, because it's like saying 2 times x, and then the opposite of multiplication is dividing. So anything on the numerator is 0 over 2 is 0, but if it was 2 over 0, it would be undefined. So just remember that. So 0 over 2 is 0. Okay, so we have 3 answers, and you always got to check if it's right. You got to put it back to this original equation. Well, I did it, and they all come out true. So I'm not going to show you the work because I already done it. So all these answers are true. But if you don't believe me, and you have to when you do it on your test, you have to always make sure it's true, because sometimes these aren't always correct. Okay. So number 3, we have 27 x to the cubed equals 1. So our goal is to find the x value, right? So first step I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this 27. How do I get rid of it? I'm going to divide both sides by 27. The reason why I'm not subtracting 27 is because that will cancel the x, because it's like saying 27 times x cubed. So what's the opposite of multiplication? Division. So that's why I'm dividing everything by 27. So you're left with x cubed equals 1 over 27. Let's see. I can rewrite this 127 another way, right? I could say x cubed equals 27 to the negative 1. This is the same thing as that, so it's just in another form. The reason why I'm going to write it like this is because I'm going to raise everything to the 1/3 power, because I want to get x by itself. So remember, when we're raising powers, you're multiplying the exponents. So it's like saying 3 times 1/3, which is just 1. So x to the 1 is just x. And then 27, the exponent of negative 1 times 1/3 is negative 1/3. So that's like saying 27 to the negative 1/3. We can simplify it even more. That's like saying 27 to the negative 1/3 is like saying 1 over 27 to the 1/3. And then that's equivalent to 1 over the cube root of 27. And if you simplify that, so that's 1 over, what is the cube root of 27? 3, right? Because 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. So it's just 1/3. So your final answer is just 1/3. And always make sure it's checked, and I checked it and it comes out true. Number 4. So we're given x minus 3 times x plus 6 equals 9x plus 22. Okay, so our goal is to find the value of x, right? So first step, I'm gonna have to FOIL this. It's not one of our perfect square or perfect square trinomials, so that's why we have to FOIL it. So it's like saying x times x is x squared. And 6 times x is positive 6x. And then negative 3 times x is negative 3x. And then negative 3 times positive 6 is negative 18. And then the 9x plus 22. So let's simplify the left side. So x squared is the same. 6x minus 3x is 3x. So that's positive 3x minus 18 equals 9x plus 22. So we said our goal is to find x, right? So let's get rid of this 9x plus 2. I want the whole right side to be 0. Right, so let's get rid of this. So let's get rid of that 9x. So one way to get rid of that 9x is subtract 9x, both sides. And then this 22, subtract 22. The reason why I didn't divide everything by 9x or 22 is because you'll get a 1. And we don't want a 1, we want a 0. So we have on the left side we have x squared plus 3x minus 9x minus 18 minus 22 equals 0. So let's simplify. So that's x squared. 3x minus 9x is negative 6x. Yeah, negative 6x. And then negative 18 minus 22 is negative 40. Equals 0. And then we do the simple factoring. It's simple factoring because you can't factor out anything. So this is just x and x. Okay, so we need two numbers multiplied gives you negative 40, and when added gives you negative 6. So here's negative 40. Let's try, does negative 2 times positive 20 works? So negative 2 times positive 20 is negative 4, so that satisfies negative 4. But what happens when you add them? Negative 2 plus 20 is not negative 6, so we can't use that number. So let's try negative 10 and plus positive 4. So negative 10 times 4 is negative 40, but when you add those, negative 10 plus 4, that gives you negative 6. So yes, we can use negative 10 and positive 4. Should equal 0. And then you know how to, you get two answers, right? So x plus 4 equals 0. So you add 10, for this part, you add 10 on both sides. So you said x equals 10, right? And then this part you just subtract 4, both sides. So our x equals negative 4. We get two answers. You put it back into the original equation to make sure it's true. And I already checked it, so I know these are true, but If you don't believe me, just put it back into the original equation. So yes, these are true. Now we're going to do something that isn't factorable. So we have t squared plus t plus 1 equals 0. We can't factor this, right? We need, because like our only option is t plus t. We need two numbers multiplied 1 and added gives you 1. It's not factorable. We'll try 1 and 1 because that's the only option we have. It does not give you, it gives you 2, not positive, not 1t, so it's not factorable. So when you're in a situation where it's not factorable, you can use the quadratic formula. So use quadratic formula. So it's basically opposite of b plus or minus root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Oops. All over 2a. This whole thing is 2a. Okay, so let's look at the original equation. So we have t squared plus t plus 1. So our a and our b and our c is basically the coefficient. So the highest degree is square, right? And then, so we have a t squared here, but it has a coefficient of 1. So that means our a is 1. Now our b is always the second highest degree, so that second highest degree is this one, because there's an invisible 1. So it's always the coefficient of t. So b is 1 as well. And then c is just the regular number, just a regular 1, so our c is just 1. It's not the coefficient, it's just the number. So in this case, 1 is the number. So now we know our a, b, and c. Now we'll just put it back in the equation. So the opposite of b is negative 1 plus or minus root b squared is 1, right? Because 1 squared is 1. Minus 4ac, which is 4. And then a times c, which is 1 times c, which is 1, divided by 2 times a, which is 1. Okay, so let's just simplify. Negative 1 plus or minus. So it's, what is 1? 1 minus 4 is negative 3 over 2. All over 2. Make sure it's all over 2. Okay, remember the rule. We cannot have a negative inside the radicand. So you have to factor out an I. So our answer should be negative 1 plus or minus I, because you can't have a negative, then square root of 3 all over 2. So this is what our t, these are our t values. So you're going to get two answers. Right, two answers. You can leave it like this, or you can leave it as negative 1 plus I square root of 3 over 2, comma, negative 1 minus I square root of 3 over 2. So this form is the same thing as this. So either way, either answer is correct. Let's do 6. So we have 3x cubed equals 24. So we got to solve for x. So what I'm going to do is, let's get rid of this 3. So it's like saying 3 times x cubed. So what's the opposite of multiplication? Division. So So you divide 3 by both sides. So you get x cubed equals, what is 24 divided by 3? 8. Okay, so our goal is to find the value of x, but we can't because we have this cubed. So let's raise everything to the 1/3. Because remember, when you're raising exponents, you're really multiplying. So this 3 times 1/3 is 1. So x to the 1 is just x. And then 8 raised 1, because there's an invisible 1, times 1/3, which is just 1/3. Okay, so we're almost there. That's like saying cube root of 8. And what number is both multiplied by 3 gives you, 3 times gives you 8, right? It would be 2, because 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. Right? Because 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. So it's just 2. And that's your final answer. Okay, so let's do 7. So we are given x plus 1 square plus x square equals 25. So I want to solve for x, right? So what I will do is I am going to I will FOIL this, and this this I can FOIL, and I know this is the perfect square trinomial. So that's x squared plus 2x plus 1, and then bring down this x squared plus x squared equals 25. So let me simplify the left. So we have an x squared. We have an x squared here and an x squared here, so that's 2x squared. Then we have a 2x, and then plus 1 equals 25. I want to solve for x, so we want the right side to equal 0. So let's get rid of this 25. So we're going to subtract 25 from both sides. So we have 2x squared plus 2x, and then 1 minus 25 is negative 24 equals 0. Let's looking at this, and I want to, before I can take out a 2, and taking out a 2 will make it so much easier when factoring. So 2 times x squared plus x, and then minus 12 equals 0. And then here, let me put it on the right. So let's factor this part. So this is x. Okay, so let's look at the negative 12. We need two numbers when multiplied gives you negative 12, and when added gives you positive 1. Can we try 4 and negative 3? Does that work? So 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. Good, that satisfies this. And then 4 plus negative 3 is positive 1, so it satisfies this part as well. So we definitely can use that one. And then don't forget the 2. We can get rid of this 2 by dividing everything by 2. So we're left with x plus 4, x minus 3. And then you know that 0 divided by 2 is just 0, so it's just 0. And then solve for 0, right? So you're going to get 2 answers, so. And then x minus 3 equals 0. So subtract 4 from both sides. So that gives you x equals negative 4. And then you add 3 from both sides. So you get x equals 3. Those are your 2 answers, and then before you always check, you always have to check by putting it into the original equation. I already did, and they both work, so we can say that these are your 2 answers. And that's all for this section.